Good afternoon, everyone. It is Saturday, June 6th, and we have hit the second half of the R's in my vinyl dive. And yeah, definitely not a big shock that it would be Rush. Before I dig into the collection a little bit, I'll tell my quick Rush story. So I was aware of Rush, but the first time I really dug into their music and fell in love with them was hearing the song Show Don't Tell from their Presto album. Presto album is not universally loved by most Rush fans. It would be sort of in the bottom half of most in-the-know fans' listings. It's a sentimental favorite for me, so I have it very high should I rank their albums. So that would have been late 1989 or early 1990 when I started to dig into it. And of course that's timeline-wise, just as grunge was sort of starting to hit its footing in pop culture, popular music. So I was, in one sense, very interested in all this new grunge, alternative rock, Soundgarden, Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Blind Melon, Smashing Pumpkins, you name it. In the meantime, I'm falling in love with a band that has a catalog of 10 to 12 previous albums with very different sounds than what you're getting in this grunge rock. Instead of crunchy guitars, shorter songs, heavy influencing, I'm getting into a band, Rush, where the progressive part of their music was important. And I mean, as much as they have some hard rocking stuff, and there's no doubt about that part, they were definitely thoughtful musicians with heavy instrumentation, a lot of noise out of three people. But Rush was a sum of the parts kind of situation where you got so much with the three of those guys put together. So obviously, took my fair share of ribbing of being a Rush fan during that same time, but proud to say I'm still a huge Rush fan today. Obviously, the shocking death of Neil Peart in January was pretty awful, especially as brain cancer has now taken two of my very favorite musicians. So, without being overly grim, we will jump into some of the Rush albums. As another little side note, since this part of my musical tour is what used albums I have in my collection, this is only scratches the surface of what I have for Rush albums. So this is the used stuff from my collection. Rush 2112. This one I have a couple different versions of. Not only do I have the new one, but I also have Rush. It was a Blu-ray concert version of it, but it was a comic book. Oh, that's the wrong half. It was also a comic book retelling of the 2112 story inside. So that's a cool one. This is this, obviously. Archives, which hasn't been re-released, but for a good reason, because it's actually just a re-release of the first three albums, Rush, Fly By Night, and Caress of Steel. Next up is All the World's a Stage, the live album. This is probably, if this isn't my very favorite live album, it's on a very short list. Only other one off the top of my head that I enjoy quite as much as a live album is probably the Rheostatics Double Live. Next up, Farewell to Kings. This came out a couple of years ago as their 40th anniversary re-release. A lot of fun bells and whistles that came with that. Hemispheres, another good album, but for Hemispheres, two things are sort of unique about this one. First of all, this version that I have came on red vinyl, which is pretty awesome. And it's also, I have it also as a picture disc, which you see the reflection of the camera, but that one doesn't get played. Generally speaking, you don't play picture discs. That's it's pretty rough on them and you don't get the best sound, so that one's hung. Permanent Waves, and this one is currently being released as their 40th anniversary edition. Put my pre-order in. Was released last week, but it is slowly making its way to me here. The last one in this chunk, Signals. So that's it for the used Rush albums that I have. Like I said, I've got quite the bigger collection coming up with the rest. The only other thing I want to do a quick shout to is the artist Martin Popoff. Maybe someone can tell me. So this one came out a few years ago. It's an illustrated history of the band Rush. It's a lot of great pictures, a lot of great anecdotes about the band. But what I'm most interested in right now is this one. It's called Anthem. So Martin has 3 books coming out in the next short while, and it's basically of the 3 sections of Rush's career. So this one came out a couple of weeks ago, and I'm just finishing a book right now about serial killers in London, Ontario. So definitely a bit of a curveball as opposed to my music stuff, but this is next up on my list. Really looking forward to digging into that one. And I guess the last thing for Rush for today, and it only comes to mind because I read it this morning on Alan Cross's website, is that there was a survey in the St. Catharines area, and 81% of people have agreed to name a pavilion in the St. Catharines area for Neil Peart. Alan made the comment, and I would also like to echo it. I'm like, what the hell is wrong with those other 19%? I suppose there's probably those that are not a big fan of naming something after a celebrity, but and I would agree that there's probably some that also think that Neil may not have been overly in favor of having his name on that thing. Neil was very private, without digging into his personal life. He went through a couple of pretty significant tragedies with the loss of his wife and then his daughter. So Neil very much took his privacy very, very important to him. So I think it's nice. It'll be a nice place for Rush fans, for the city and the community of St. Catharines to acknowledge somebody who came from their community and was very important. But I do agree that I'm not sure whether Neil would have been a huge fan of this or not, but be that as it may. So that's it for today. We are back. The next 3 days are all going to be on the letter S. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.